Good evening, class. Welcome to our online facilitation class about 304, which is general ecology. I will take this opportunity to welcome all you students this semester's course. My name is Dr. Emeka Peterson, and I'm your facilitator for this particular course. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Ibadan State, and the area of specialization is ecology and environmental biology. So I check details of my profile on the course page. I was expecting of seeing students today, then decided to make records this class. I want to use this opportunity to intimate you what we shall be doing. I have 8 weeks of lecture, 7 weeks precisely. The 8th week is meant for us to have a revision of this course. Some of you who are in ecology, this is further shoot on introductory ecology. We want to further broaden your knowledge on what the concept of the ecosystem is, what are the fundamental steps that are needed in the operation of this ecosystem. We shall be looking at the different types of the ecosystem. Also, your notes should also be looking at the difference between habitat and niche. I know some of you seem to mix up the meaning sometimes these two definitions. We should also be looking at the food chain and the food web, how these operates in the ecosystem, ecological community, the aquatic community, and how man has been able to influence this environment. So it's going to be a rich, very rich week. We shall be looking at these different aspects. So, today's class is just for us, just to introduce us as to what we shall be doing in the week. Has to do with the study of the ecosystem. Some definition as to what ecosystem is, and then to be able to give us an understanding straight to the point definition. It's always used to represent a whole community, organisms, and the environment as a unit. We can say sometimes this consists of a community of organisms, which are the biotic factors, plus the associated physical environment, which is the abiotic factor. So what we're trying to say is that ecosystem consists of plant and animal interacting with the abiotic factor in the environment. So, what are these components of ecosystem? What are the components of the ecosystem? Perhaps the producers and the consumers. Yes, and the producers, as we know, are the green plants. Green plants. That's for those in the terrestrial environment. Whereas for those in the aquatic, we note them as the phytoplanktons or the plankton organisms. These are the primary producers that we have, each the essential components of the ecosystem. After the green plants, we have the consumers, because when you produce, you have to consume. consume what you produce. So we have the consumers, and the consumers are divided into four parts. But two are the carnivorous. But first on the list is the herbivores. After the herbivores, we have the carnivores. These are the parasites or the scavengers, saprophytes. So we have herbivores, carnivores. Under it, we have the parasites, scavengers, saprophytes. All these are the consumers. We also have another component which is also known as the decomposers. Because after the consumers feeds on the primary or the producers, they die. They do die. The decomposer feeds on these carnivores. When they decompose, they are transformed into nutrient. They decompose and transform into nutrient. So that's just a basic structure that describes how the components of the ecosystem is. So in a nutshell, you have the living and non-living components of the ecosystem, and the non-living components are the light and the nutrients. The light that supplies radiation to the green plant that manufacture the food, and the nutrients that are gotten from decomposed carnivores that have been transformed. These two components, non-living components, interact because from the nutrients, the green plants feeds on them. All right, the ecosystem is divided into two. The aquatic terrestrial. The aquatic and the terrestrial ecosystem. Although the aquatic are found in the marine, the brackish estuaries, we have three major body waters. Even though other water bodies will still fall under these three major body waters. We have the marine, we have the brackish, and also the fresh water. Other ones like the streams, the river, the ponds, and the lakes, all still falls under the fresh water habitat. Why these habitats are differentiated is because of the salt concentration. More of salts are found in the marine. In between the marine and the fresh water is what we have the brackish water. And final on the list of all the fresh water. And the primary producers, as we know, are the planktonic organisms found in these different ecosystems. They all have the different zonations. Fresh water and the marine environment have their different zonations. So if we have plantains are the primary producers in water, it means that the fish, the smaller fishes, serve as the consumers, these primary producers. But before then, there's always an intermediate because we have both the primary and the secondary consumers. Basically, the prime producers or consumers are the invertebrates, and then there's the mollusks, the aquatic arthropods. This falls under the primary producers. Sometimes that also describes as the benthic organisms, Secondary producers, secondary consumers, and the fishes, the different types of fishes, both the pelagic and the benthic fish. Same in the terrestrial habitat. Different biomes have tropical rainforest, temperate rainforest, savanna, temperate grassland. Each region has its unique biomes. What we have in the temperate biomes is quite different from what we have in the tropical biomes. Yes. all the different biomes also have same patterns of the component of the system. Primary producer and the producer rather, either the primary consumer, secondary consumer, finally producer. So that is how the ecosystem works. The okay, ecosystem is quite an interesting aspect of ecology. Very interesting because we have so many things to learn from this ecosystem. We're going to learn the different types of functions, how these ecosystem function. We're going to learn how they also interact, how energy is produced, so forth. So, like I did said, okay. Model one of all right, so like I said, we'll talk about the differences in habitat and also niche. The food chain, at the concept of the food chain, where the green plants, by producing electricity, capture energy from sunlight that falls on their leaves and convert it to food energy. When these plants are consumed by other organisms, the percentage of the plants accumulate energy is actually converted to the bodies of these organisms. Several levels may be recognized among these consumers. And then the herbivores, which are the primary consumers, feed that from the green plant and serve as food. Primary consumers, which are the secondary consumers. These in turn may fall to prey to other secondary products, in some cases, other stages of nutrition. So what we're trying to say is that the food chain are stages, are levels of the primary producers, or the producers as we may call the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, and so on and so forth. So the tissue of these various plants and animals will also be eaten by parasites and organisms are dead. These ones are known as the consumers, or scavengers and sacrifice as we. So these are the different levels that we see in terms of the concept. And if you want to check your course materials, page 10 of it, you see a little chart that shows this typical food chain that we see, where you have the producers, apicultures, first level carnivores, and second level carnivores. And as a take home an assignment for you, want you to give or show a simple chart in your local environment that shows a typical food chain. Like I said, as an assignment, look at a typical food chart that you can find in your locality. That is the best activity. So, what's the difference between a food chart and a food web? Well, in a food chart, as we say, these are different levels of energy that is transferred from one level to the other. But in a food web, it's difficult for one particular organism to only feed on one kind of organism. It will feed on two or more types of organisms. So there are different types of organisms. So what I want to show you that the interrelationship that has faced in one organisms or the other that links with one them. That is what we know as food web. Interconnected food chain in which energy and materials circulate within an ecosystem is what we know as a food web. A typical food web you will see on page 11 of your course material. It was taken from Rabin and Johnson 1996, where you will see that the fish feeds on the upwards with the zooplanktons, and the fish sometimes may feed on aquatic beds that are found on the shore of the water. And it is the same fish that either the birds can also feed on and humans can feed on. See? And that is the same fish. I mean, most of the benthic organisms can either be fed by the fish or by the mollusks or the benthic organisms. Then the algae on their part can feed parasites on some of these mollusks. So that shows the different interconnectivity that exists or interrelationship that exists among different organisms in an aquatic environment. Now, there's always a term that they use, pyramids of numbers, trophic levels, and so on and so forth. Yes, it's to show the length of the food chain. Trophic level is to show each successful level of nutrient that links within the food chain. It shows what organisms feed on and what feeds on them. The parameter within an ecosystem constitutes the first trophic level. That is what we've said when we started this class. The herbivores form the primary and the second primary carnivore from the third level and so forth. So as we have seen, like I did give an example that you have, just look at the locality and see how you can describe a simple chart that shows this phenomenon. Simple chart that shows the different level that exists. All right. Now, sometimes we use for terms like pyramids of number. Yes. Among the organisms or animals of computer, the others are typically the most numerous. Yes. The primary or the basic or the foundation of this pyramid, the herbivores. They take food materials by plants and producers and pass it on to the subsequent crop. So primary carnivores now feeds on these herbivores, which are less abundant than secondary terrestrial carnivores that exist in safer number. So as the level goes up, the number decreases. So this numerical relationship within the most abundant species near the base of the trend and the less abundant near the top is known as what we know as the pyramid of number. At the base, we always have much. The primary consumers are also lesser compared to the primary producers. The secondary consumers are also lesser as compared to the primary consumers, and the terrestrial are also lesser. So that's the pattern of uh, level. It's what we know as pyramid numbers. And the existence of a point leads to inverted pyramid when many parts are much smaller are touched. So as you can check your course materials on page 13, you will see what we've been. Typical example of the pyramids of number. The typical example of marine environment. It was taken from Rabin and Johnson, 1996, where we have planting abundance of almost 6 billion. 6 billion. And you can see the herbivores with feeds on the plantains are lesser than the numbers that we have. Same with the carnivores, which is number 1. So we have an inverted pyramid on the results. You can see in this inverted one, as you can see in the next page, which is page 14. We have the producers, herbivores, first level carnivores. What about the pyramid of biomass? The pyramid is the size, growth rate, and longevity of species making up a particular ecosystem. So the living weight or biomass of the numbers of the food chain present at any one time form a type of pyramid. Right. For example, the biomass of the existing at the moment of creation is only the greatest, and the biomass of herbivores, carnivores, are progressively smaller. What we're saying is that, for example, the biomass of the vegetation that exists in a particular environment will normally be more than the biomass of the herbivores that feed this vegetation. And the biomass of the herbivores rather will also be much as compared to carnivore. Same with what we have on page 15 of our course material, where the phytoplankton or the planktons much biomass as compared to herbivores, first carnivores, and second carnivores. So now let's assess ourselves what we have done as the second class activity. All right. Can you differentiate the difference between habitat and niche? You can do that. Can you use a typical example to describe these differences? That will be your second class activity. So, as I said, we have seen able to look at the aspect of ecosystem and understand that it's the most complex level of biological organization. Very complex, and this needs a detailed understanding of how these things relate, how they regulate the flow of energy, the cycling of nutrients, and how life forms, the plants, the animals, and organisms depend on these different stages. We have also seen that species within an ecosystem are known to occur in a particular habitat. And we're also seeing that different types of ecosystem, which are the terrestrial and the aquatic. We're also seeing the feeding relationship that exists. We look at the pyramids of numbers and also pyramid of bimes. So next week, we'll be looking at the cyclings of nutrient ecosystem, looking at the different nutrients, carbon cycle, the oxygen cycle, the water cycle, phosphorus, and so on and so forth. So I employed all you please make sure you look at your notes, make sure you are prepared for next class so that it will be an interesting and interactive one. All will be able to benefit from this class. It's been great an opportunity for me to be appointed to be an external assessor in this course. And, everyone being around so that we can all benefit. What I would do, I will, on our discussion forum, I will put up a question. I want everybody to be involved. I'll make it open for some days so that everybody participates in it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week.